And now, the moment you've all been waiting for. You're tuned in to Tapped Out. Hosted by Brendan Tobin and Sean Levine. Only on the BetQL Network.
An unbelievable night of fights on Saturday night. You've come to the right place to talk about it and make some money. The BetQL Network. Maybe you're checking us out on YouTube or the Odyssey app. It's Tapped Out. That's Brendan Tobin. I'm the sports machine, Sean Levine. And BT, Islam knocked out Volkanovski in round one. When it comes to Islam, man, turns out that he's that dude. Can anybody beat him?
Man, that's such a good question because, you go and you look like that. It's interesting because, Alexander Volkanovski kind of had a lot of the similar questions when it came to Max Holloway, right? Like, people were, talking about such a close rivalry and, Max was the fan favorite and Max was the guy that everybody was looking at and being like, oh, he got robbed. He's still that guy. And Volkanovski just had to go and cement it. And, ironically, the other thing, that exact thing happened to Volk in this fight with that, taking that vicious head kick. I mean, of all the ways I figured he was going to lose and never would have thought it was going to be losing like that. And that's such a dangerous thing because we've now seen that happen to the same guy on that card with Kamaru Usman. So to answer your question on Islam, you beat a guy like Alexander Volkanovski like that, even though he's taking it on short notice. The guy looks like he could be a wrecking machine for a while. His striking has definitely looked impressive. So this could be a reign for a little bit for Islam.
Think about this resume, Brendan, you talk about beating Volkanovski not once, but twice. Charles Oliveira, he's putting some notches on there. Do you think now we can kind of come back around to the Khabib comparisons that we've heard the entire time and go, yeah, maybe he is the next coming of Khabib?
Yeah, I think the thing that's interesting with Islam is, he's just doing it in such a different fashion. I feel like with Khabib, we saw that absolute buzzsaw stuff back at the end, especially the Gaethje fight. But, Islam on the big stage now doing what he did to Charles Oliveira in such easy fashion and then winning in such highlight reel fashion this way against Volk, he's almost got more, style to his wins than Khabib did, which was basically
let me cut you off
real
quick, though.
Hold you up against the cage and smash you.
Real quick, though, the biggest difference is we've seen Islam almost lose. In our eyes, he did lose the first time around against Volkanovski. Did we even ever see Khabib lose a round?
No, the closest we see, maybe the one round against Conor and then the guillotine against Poirier.
That's it. So, I think you look at the dominance in the way they wins. I agree with you. Maybe Islam's a little bit more exciting when it comes to total dominance. Like, if we say that Islam's in his prime right now, and we say Khabib was in his prime at the end there when he was fighting Conor and Poirier and Gaethje and all those guys, I still think that Khabib is a notch above what Islam is right now. Not to say that he can't get there.
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing. I think Khabib's got the better resume, but I think the thing that is interesting is they're compared to each other, obviously, because of their close relationship and train together. But Islam's reign has just been different. Like, he is going and finishing these guys in highlight fashion where, Khabib would usually drown you over 5 rounds. Maybe he'd eventually get you and choke you out. But typically it was a slow death with Khabib and that he would just smash on you for 5 rounds. That's what the genius of him was. And I just feel like we always knew it was trip up against the cage, get on your back, pound you. That's usually how it would go. With Islam, he's shown a little bit more of a versatility to him. I'm not saying one's better or one's not. It's just it is what it is. Like, that's how they've gone about it. The one thing that's gonna be interesting with Islam is in terms of all-time great, could he ever pass Khabib? Like, right now, you look at the same guys that are there kind of at the top of that division. Those guys are now all in his prime, and Khabib is beating those guys. Like, now you're going to go beat Gaethje. Well, Khabib's already done that. He's done it in very dominant fashion. So could he do it better? I don't know. But that's the thing Islam's probably got to look out for is, who are going to be the guys that he's going to have rivalries with and gun for.
Beat Oliveira again. That's it. If you beat Oliveira twice, and then if you beat Alexander Volkanovski twice. I mean, what are they going to say about you? As far as Volk goes, it looks like we're still going to see the matchup against Ilya Taporia. Does your opinion of Volkanovski in that fight change at all based on what you saw on Saturday night?
No, I think the only thing that you could really say for Volk, first of all, I mean, look, both him and Usman taking the fights as quick as they did, like that's not easy, and it's pretty crazy. You don't see really in any other sports, in combat sports, guys of that status and stature do that on short notice. It's
especially
so
on the same
hard.
card,
guys,
the same night.
Yeah, they put in so much to these into these training camps and all this preparation for stuff. Yeah, every once in a while you'll have a Michael Bisping off the couch go there and do it, but you're talking about these guys are maybe going up against two of the more dangerous fighters in the world, and they just did it. And so that speaks to me as far as Volkanovski's concerned. No, he doesn't slip too much in status for me, but yeah, for right now the rivalry is on the shelf. Like it is, the circumstances are the circumstances. So I don't really know. Would I be against ever seeing them fight again? No, but I think that Volk, he's just got the temperament to know, like, I'm gonna have to go reign over featherweight for a little bit, at least until Islam decides I'm done with 155.
And for what it's worth, this should put Islam at the top of the pound-for-pound rankings now that Jon Jones is going to be out for a little while and that he clearly beat Alexander Volkanovski. Brendan Tobin, Sports Machine, Sean Levine talking a little fighting here on Tapped Out. You mentioned Usman. He fought Khamzat Chimaev on Saturday night on short notice. Look, there were a lot of varying opinions of what the scorecard should have been. I think everybody agrees that in the first round, it wasn't even close. Khamzat came out. He ragdolled him. I thought it was a 10-8. I think most people thought that Usman won the second round. And we're going to bring producer Jake in here in just a minute because he's got a crazy thought on this fight himself. Before we get his thoughts, what did you think about the scorecards? Did you think it was right, the majority decision for Khamzat? Because I think it was.
The only thing I really have a problem with is the 10-8. I know that's a very popular opinion, and that's what the judges went with. I don't agree that it was a 10-8.
He had him on the ground the whole time.
But that's my point, is like, who cares, dude? You had him on the ground the entire time looking for a submission. He wasn't smashing his face in. He did not dominate him to the point of obliteration. And I just think that I have a problem in this sport that you have control of a guy, you don't successfully submit him, and yet that equates to a 10-8, whereas a striker could go out there, knock a guy down twice, and he ain't getting a 10-8. I just have a problem with it in general. I know that was probably going to be the way they go, but I think in a 10-8, you not only have to have the guy controlled, but you need to beat him down. And I don't feel like Khamzat did that. Now, I still think he very obviously won the round. I think he won the third round. I think he deserved the win. But I just thought that the 10-8, I didn't get it. I knew that was probably the way they were going to go. I've had this problem now for the longest with the sports on 10-8s, in that it very heavily favors grapplers when grapplers don't successfully do anything once they get the takedown. Whereas you could be a striker, you could head kick somebody, knock him down, you could put a lot of damage, and they'll still, if a guy swung back at you, you won't get a 10-8. It's just
I'll say this.
It's too weighted for grapplers.
Most of the time, as fight fans, we all agree, that was a 10-8. We know what a 10-8 looks like. It's hard to kind of put your finger on it and describe, but you know what a 10-8 is. I'm with you. That one was a very debatable 10-8, kind of like Poirier McGregor in round one, and I guess that would be their most recent fight. Like, some people thought that was a 10-8. Anyway, let's get producer Jake in here, because how did you score that fight, Khamzat versus Usman?
So I was under some fire this week on Twitter, on X, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, because I scored the fight 30-26 for Khamzat. I gave Khamzat 1, which was a 10-8, and then 2 and 3, which were 10-9s. I mean, was it a definitive 10-8 first? No. But 3.5 minutes of control, 15 out of 16 significant strikes landed on the ground, 3 submission attempts. Usman landed 3 strikes. That's 10-8 waters for me, man. I scored a 10-8. Round 2 was close,
Jake,
but
dude,
gave it to Khamzat.
I love you like a brother, but man, if you would have said that it was a draw and you thought Usman won 2 and 3, I'd go, you're crazy and you're wrong. But I can see how you came up with that. The fact that you think that Khamzat won every round 10-8 in the first one, you're the only guy that doesn't think that I've talked to that doesn't think that Usman at least won round 2.
What were you thinking in round 2? Was it just because of the late takedown? You didn't think Usman strikes did anything? Because that's the thing where, like, when I go to 10-8, it's like Usman landed better strikes in round 2 than Khamzat did in round 1. Like, I don't know. I just think that's like, what was your reasoning for that?
So because round 2 was such a close round, I like to score fights through the eyes of the judges. I don't necessarily go through what I always think because I can be biased. I like to go, what do I think those cage side judges are going to score this? Being it a super close round, being that the fight was in Abu Dhabi, I was like, those judges are going to view this round because of the crowd sway as a Khamzat round. So I gave it the edge to Khamzat. That was really my thought there. But it could have gone to Usman, like people scoring the fight 29, 27, 29, 28. Not a bad scorecard.
So speaking of Abu Dhabi, and then we'll take a break after this, Johnny Walker went at it with Magomed Ankalaev. You had the illegal strike, right? Johnny Walker's kind of dancing around the octagon there for a minute. And then we have an English-speaking doctor ask a Brazilian fighter in Abu Dhabi what country he's in. How could this possibly go wrong? And then, of course, Johnny Walker kind of gives him like a, what? And they cancel the fight. And then Johnny Walker tried to fight everybody inside the octagon. Dude, that was one of the weird things that I've seen.
Yeah, that was wild. I don't really understand what the rush was with that doctor. That seemed very weird that we were so in a hurry to decide whether or not, because typically you do get like 5 minutes on a foul. So
sure.
I didn't get that at all. That was really weird. I didn't quite, the questioning was weird. I didn't really understand, like, Johnny Walker seems like he speaks perfectly fine English, but I get him saying, like, wait, what is why are you asking me that? Why not? How many fingers am I holding up? I don't know. I mean, I've never been a ringside doctor, but it does feel like it was handled hastily and poorly.
It was a very interesting and weird fight card on Saturday night. With that, let's take a quick break. On the other side, let's keep talking about it with Maddie Betts right here on Tapped Out.
We're back with more Tapped Out with Brendan Tobin and Sean Levine on the BetQL Network.
Tapped Out, rolling along your radio. or your YouTube. If you're checking us out on the Odyssey app, that's Brendan Tobin. I'm the sports machine, Sean Levine. Let's welcome in friend of the show. He is Matty Betts. You can follow him at Matty Betts with 2 S's. Man, last Saturday night, unbelievable fight. Islam kicked Volk in the head and knocked him out. Now that we're a few days removed from it, how surprised are you that that's the way that fight finished?
So actually, I don't want to brag on air here, but that's the exact prediction I made.
Really?
I said Islam would land either a body shot or a head kick that would put Volk to the ground and TKO him on the ground. However, you want to hear the crazy part about this? I took it to happen in rounds 2 through 5. I had the long shot props. I'm telling you right now, I was devastated. You got to see the video reaction. I had so many people that tailed me on the knockout prop. It was like 5-1, and everyone was DMing me so excited. And I'm like, how is it that I literally have 2 videos predicting the exact way the fight's going to end, and I don't even make a penny on it? I actually lost.
Brutal, dude.
I took rounds 2 through 5. It was like 25-1 all the way up to like 35, 40-1. Basically a quarter unit sprinkle on every single round, all 4 of those rounds except the first one. So it was absolutely sickening. It took me like a day and a half to get over it.
So in that moment, are you proud of yourself, or are you hoping Volkanovski can continue to get to the second round?
I couldn't believe it. I was more stunned than anything. Like, I just didn't see it happen in the first 5 minutes, And I guess looking back on it, like hindsight's 2020, I got greedy. Should have just took the knockout prop. I really, really liked it. I just thought like to myself, like, hey, Islam's going to be fresher, more prepared, bigger, more hydrated this time. Volkanovski on short notice. And I was like, this guy can't get submitted. Like Volkanovski, I really believe he's unsubmittable. So I was like, there's 2 ways Islam can win. It's by decision or by KO. Now, I did take the double chance bet where I took the KO or decision. So I won that bet, but I missed on all 4 of the long shot props. Just getting a little bit too greedy there.
Yeah, Brian Ortega agrees with you, Matty Betts. He is unsubmittable when it comes to Alexander Volkanovski. So when it comes to Islam, if I said, all right, Matty, you can pick anybody on planet Earth. Just give me one guy that can beat Islam. Does that guy exist?
At this weight class or at 170?
Yeah, at this weight class.
At this weight class, nah. Yeah, I don't know if he exists in either weight class. I mean, I've said it for the past year. I've always thought Islam's striking has been super underrated. It's like I just don't think he has a weakness at this stage of the game. Like I don't think he has a weakness anywhere. So like you have to find a lucky shot or find his chin, and if you can't do that, like I just don't think you have a chance of beating him. So I would take him against Leon or Colby.
Matty, going to the co-main event, another one with a huge matchup between Hamzat and Kamaru. Kamaru taking this one on short notice. How did you bet that one? How did it play out in the way that you bet it?
Yeah, I lost that fight. I had Hamzat, but I took him inside the distance. I didn't think Kamaru was going to be able to survive for 3 rounds on short notice, and then I know there's all that speculation if Hamzat got hurt or not after the first round, but man, Kamaru's defense was tough on the ground. Like, I mean, credit to Hamzat. He really tried to get him out of there in that first round. I took the round 1 finish, and then I took him inside the distance. So I lost both those bets. But it is what it is. I knew deep down, I knew Hamzat could just outwork him and win a decision. And like, for whatever reason, I ignored it. It was like deep down in my gut. I was like, why am I doing this? But I just thought he was going to steamroll him in that first round. And then I knew if he didn't get him out of there the first round, there was a legit chance he would just win a decision. But it was a closer fight than a lot of people thought.
That's what I was going to ask you. Coming out of that fight, are you more impressed with Hamzat than you were going in? Or maybe a little bit less, because his wrestling was exactly like we thought it was going to be. I mean, in the first round, he just ragdolled him. But his striking, man, leaves a lot to be desired.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I would love to know more about, I don't know if you guys have heard about the injury he had, if that's legit or not. Did he break his hand or hurt his hand or something? But yeah, no, to answer your question, I'm definitely not more impressed. I don't think he's lost any stock. But I'm definitely not more impressed with him. I thought he was going to get him out of there. Like, he hasn't fought in over a year, training. He's the bigger guy coming in on short notice. Like, I thought he was going to get him out of there, and he couldn't get it done.
Where do you think that Usman should go from here? It's such a tough position because, he obviously had a devastating the head kick. Everybody knows he hasn't been blown out in these last couple of fights, but when you've reigned as long as he has, it's almost like, I don't know, like a Max Holloway type of situation. I don't really feel like he's got a home. Like, where do you think Kamaru Usman should go from here?
I want to see him fight Robert Whittaker. That's what I'd love to see.
That's a good fight. That would be a good fight.
I would love to see that fight. I think it'd be a super even fight. Whittaker has a takedown defense. I think Whittaker's obviously probably a little bit better of a striker on the feet. But I think that Usman's tough, and I make that fight pretty close to a pick-em. I think that'd be a great matchup.
How do you think Khamzat fares against Sean Strickland?
I love Sean Strickland there in that fight. I really do. I think Sean's the most underrated guy in the game. Like, I really do. Like, he's constantly he constantly gets disrespected. Well, I took his money. It's funny because when I came on your guys' show a while back, I remember you guys asked me, does Sean have any chance against Adesanya? And when you guys put me on the spot like that, I was like, no, I don't think he does. And then I ended up going on record and betting Sean money line in that fight, making multiple prediction videos. I had one video got like 1.5 million views. Every person on earth told me I was the stupidest casual fan in the world. And I'm telling you, I spent 2 hours going back to every single comment on that video after the fight. But no, and the thing is that just goes to show, like, you have to bet value in MMA, because I bet on Sean and I didn't think he was going to win. I bet on him because he was plus 500. I looked at the numbers. I looked at who these guys have fought, and it's like there's no scenario where he should have been a 5-1 underdog. It should have been closer to plus 200. Just looking at everything, I was like, I have to take him. I have no choice, and I literally made a video stating that. And yeah, I think Sean, he gets out of that first round. I don't think it's even competitive after that. I really don't. I like Sean in that fight. I would take him at anything over plus 200 for sure. I know he's probably going to be a 3-1 dog in that fight, maybe a little bit less. I love him as an underdog there.
Do you agree with his take this week that Khamzat doesn't really deserve a title shot by just beating a, short notice welterweight?
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't deserve it, but it's the fight game, it's business. I mean, you got DC the other day saying that Islam should fight Conor McGregor now. So, like, you know how this industry is. Like, I mean, no one really deserves anything, but at the same time, if you have hype behind you and you can make if you can make the UFC money, then it is what it is. That's what's going to happen. So, but no, I agree with him. I don't think he quote unquote deserves it.
Talking fighting and making a little money with Matty Betts here on Tapped Out. The big news, the breaking news in the world of MMA, Jon Jones' fight is off against Stipe Miocic. Now we have Pavlovich versus Aspinall. Before we get into the new matchup, do you think that we see Jon Jones and or Stipe ever again inside the octagon?
I don't know the answer to that. I think Stipe maybe at least once more. I don't know what Jon has to prove. I think he's going to be out, like, did he say 8 months or something?
8 months, yep.
That's a long time, I guess, and I don't know if they've commented on, because a lot of people are like, well, why didn't Stipe just, keep the fight and take on one of like Aspinall or Pavlovich? But I guess the thought process behind that is they're literally still saving that fight and they still think it's going to happen. But if you're Stipe and you're being told that, you now have a lot of time to prepare while Jon's recovering from that injury. So I don't know. I'm not sure.
Do we think it's that, though? Or do we think that Stipe said, screw it, I'll fight Jon because that adds to my legacy? This guy Pavlovich is scary, and Aspinall might be the best heavyweight on planet Earth. I think Stipe just said, I'll fight Jon, but if it's not Jon, I'm not going to fight.
Yeah. No, I mean, it might just be one of those risk versus reward things of, like, if you put Jon Jones on your resume and win, you're definitely, like, the GOAT, the heavyweight GOAT, right? But, like, if you go out and lose to Pavlovich, now what, right? And I've always thought I've always been on record saying Aspinall's I think he's the best in the world, but I'm still nervous about him. I would still bet on him in this fight at like a pick'em. I would take him, but man, anybody can lose in that first round of Pavlovich. It's scary. And like Aspinall keeps his chin up in the air every now and then when he's coming forward. So I don't know if he doesn't get a takedown, it could be good night for him.
Yeah, I think the early leans right now are, I think it's Aspinall like -135, Pavlovich is +114. Dude, I saw him knock out Tai Tuivasa cage side. He's the scariest Russian I've ever seen in my life. He peruses around here in South Florida just with his fancy shirts, not trying to look all relaxed when he could just maul anybody, Maddie. I'm with you. I think like Sean's also been a big Aspinall guy. We've had him on the show. He's a cool dude. Pavlovich is so scary, dude. If I got him as a dog, there's no way I wouldn't bet him.
Yeah, no. So I made the fight -120 +105-ish, right? Like I thought Aspinall should be a slight favorite. But man, the more you look at that dog number, you're just like, I get that huge Russian at +115. It's like, it's crazy to think about. But I'll tell you what, though, I still believe Aspinall is the more well-rounded guy. And I mean, he has some really impressive wins too. I mean, that submission win over Volkov, the Tybura fight, like he is really, really good, man. So I just wonder if his pride and ego is going to be to his detriment here, and if he just tries to stand and strike with him. And we saw what Curtis Blades did. And I had Pavlovich round 2 knockout in that fight because the jump, everyone knew the round 1 knockout was probably coming. So the value bet and the jump up in odds, taking the round 2 versus the round 1 was a massive leap. So I took the round 2 thinking like, all right, maybe Curtis Blades is smart here, gets a takedown or two in that first round. The first 5 minutes passes and then he gets slept. But nope, Curtis Blades comes in and tries striking with him the entire first round. So I'd like to think Aspinall won't do that, but you just never know, man. You just never know with these guys.
And I'm glad you keep pointing out the value bets, Matty Bets, because in our sport, like mixed martial arts, sometimes you have to look at the numbers more so than the name. You have to look and go, if I'm going to get 4-1 on that guy, then I have to bet it. All right, Aspinall and Pavlovich is actually the co-main event for UFC 295. Before you get out of here, which way you bet in the main event that night, Pereira versus Prohaska?
Yeah, I love Alex Pereira in that fight. So I locked him in early about a month or so ago. I got him as a small favorite. I don't remember the exact number, but I know that I think it was close to a pick-em. I couldn't believe it. I honestly couldn't believe it. I think now he's ballooned up some. Do you know what the current number is? I think it was like I think he's past -150 now or so. But no, I like Pereira in that fight.
Yeah, -150 for Pereira, +125 for Yuri.
Gotcha. Yeah. I got Alex closer to a pick'em, and I couldn't believe when that number came out. Just coming off the surgery and everything, and Alex super active, and then you see Alex's progression in MMA. Like the guy noticeably gets better every single fight. So I couldn't believe it. Like if someone tells you like, hey, you get Alex Pereira to pick him against another striker, I think you're going to take it every single time. Like if it's an elite grappler, you're going to think twice about it. But I thought it was a no-brainer. Hopefully it's not a trap.
It's not a trap. I like it too. Great stuff today, man. Lots of great insight and numbers. Sorry you got screwed on that one bet. I would still be losing sleep over that. He is Matty Betts. You can follow him at Matty Betts with 2 S's. We'll catch up soon, my friend.
Thanks, guys.
Sean Levine will step into the cage with Brendan Tobin in Are You Gonna Fight Me?
I'm gonna fight your ass!
Here on Tapped Out.
That's right, fight me like a man!
Only on the BetQL network.
You know the rules. I want a good, clean fight. When I tell you to break, I want you to step back out my command and break. Now go back to the corner and come out fighting at the bell.
What's good? Welcome back to the Tapped Out here on the BetQL network. Maybe you're checking us out on YouTube, Odyssey app, however you got us. Much love right back at you. Brendan Tobin and myself, the sports machine Sean Levine, about to fight each other. BT, if this is it for Stipe Miocic, are you going to fight me if I say, I don't think he's the heavyweight GOAT? I think that goes to either Fedor or you probably talk me into Cain Velasquez. You going to fight me?
I mean, he's got a lot of great credentials on that, man. I mean, first off, just regaining the belt. I think he's beaten everybody he's basically been in there with. Has kind of crossed over eras as well. So I think he's got a hell of an argument, man. I mean, you think about how much and how long he has been atop that organization, has beaten eras of top guys coming after him, avenged losses. I mean, Fedor thing is awesome. And yes, it goes back. It's kind of one of those OGs. It's always tough to kind of dethrone those guys who are always going to be etched in there. But I mean, Stipe has done everything there really is to do. I mean, this was going to be, I think if it's disappointing we're not getting the Jon Jones fight, because that was almost like, is he going to go down not only as one of the all-time heavyweight greats, is he going to go down as one of the all-time greats if he was able to beat Jon Jones? So that's one of the more disappointing things about not being able to get this bout.
And if anything, I think a win versus Jon Jones would have cemented him as the greatest heavyweight of all time. And if they don't fight, or if they don't fight for a while, now we've got differing opinions. All right, now on the Jon Jones side of things, you're going to fight me if I say history is going to remember Jon Jones as much inside the octagon, unfortunately, as outside the octagon.
Yeah, it's impossible. I'm not going to fight you on that. It's impossible not to tell the Jon Jones story without talking about all the baggage that was brought. And it's interesting. It's like he's had so many run-ins and trip-ups in his career. It's interesting that injuries never really been one of them. And so it's unfortunate because this is something where he is doing the right things. He is training to get ready for a fight. And it's just, it kind of adds on top of it with all the other stuff as well, because it's like, how many times do we have a Jon Jones fight? It's the most anticipated fight, and then just something happens. And I think that's just the unfortunate thing with the career is, like, as great as it is, and it is great, it always is going to have this feeling like, could it have been better? Could there have been another level he would have gone to? Or did it all fall in line the right way? Is this just what the journey was supposed to be with him? Because his recklessness, his persona, that all kind of added to the aura and the greatness.
The crazy thing about Jon, BT, is if you look back at it, about a third of his career, he will have been outside the octagon, whether it was taking time off, whether it was legal troubles, whatever, suspensions, whatever it was, almost a third of his fighting career was outside of the octagon. So if I ask you right now, what's the moment when you think of Jon Jones? Let's say this is it for him. Let's say he doesn't come back. What's the in-octagon moment you think of Jon Jones?
I mean, so many, man. I mean, the standing guillotine, beating Vitor Belfort with him, on his arm like a pork chop. The DC rivalry is always going to be one, and that's kind of in and out, because you'll have the brawl, but then you'll also have him beating him with the head kick. So he has so many signature great moments. I mean, the Alexander Gustafsson fight, being able to dig deep in that fight. Some people still even think that he lost that fight. It was that close. It was that good. One of the best championship fights of all time. So that's the element. Like, he has so many iconic moments that he built up all that goodwill because this guy's one of the best to ever do it. We never see anybody like it. We talk about a sport where most of these guys are hitting their prime about 29, about 30. This guy was champ 21 years old. I mean, it's incredible what he was able to do.
Youngest champion of all time. By the way, you didn't ask. I do think that he lost the first Gustafsson fight, but really neither here nor there. The last pay-per-view of the year, 296, the main event, Colby Covington versus Leon Edwards. Right now, it's pretty close to a pick 'em. Leon's a little bit of a favorite to bet MGM. You're going to fight me if I say, by the time that fight goes off, I think Colby's going to be the favorite.
Yeah, not going to fight you just because, it's trending that way. And typically, we talk about this on the show a lot. A lot of the times, the guy who seems like he's got the big grappling advantage is going to get the nod just because it's easier to win decisions when you have a grappling advantage. When you have control on top. You look back at the Khamzat fight this past week. But it's if you look back at the Khamzat fight, like those rounds where you're on control and you're not necessarily doing heavy damage, but you have a guy down, which is not necessarily how Colby wrestles, but just in the mind of odds makers, you're going to usually be favored in odds if it's looked upon as a pretty even fight, just because you have more paths to score rounds and score points.
So at UFC 294, we were supposed to get Paulo Costa and Khamzat Chimaev. Paulo Costa out due to injury, and it was nasty, some sort of a staph infection, but he still got into a fight at 294. That's just what he does. You're going to fight me if I say, that guy's a gatekeeper. He's never going to be champion.
I'm going to fight you on just because
he's good.
I'll tell you what.
Champion.
Here's why I'll fight you on it. People said that about Sean Strickland, and Sean Strickland's champion. I mean, I think everybody kind of looked at Sean Strickland and say that guy was a gatekeeper. He's never going to be anything more than a guy who, kind of grabs some attention to a card. But Paulo Costa is very explosive. Doesn't quite seem as disciplined as Sean Strickland. It seems like he likes to kind of live life a little loose on the outside of the cage. So that may hinder him. But I think after Sean Strickland won the belt, I think it's tough to write anybody of high ranking off because the sport is crazy.
Over under for Sean Strickland title defenses 1.
I think it's over. I mean, I really do. I think that he's got a tough style to figure out. The even the Khamzat matchup. Like, I think Sean Strickland's got so many tough things to figure out. He's so good at fighting. And I especially think with Khamzat, like the questioning with the striking against Kamaru Usman, and we saw this against Gilbert Burns. I think Sean Strickland's going to present him some problems. I'm going to have to probably see what the odds are once that fight comes out to see where I'm going to lean on my money. But I definitely think Sean can present some problems.
And Khamzat could knock you out, just as Gerald Meerschaert. But he also just kind of swings loose, and his boxing definitely, he needs to talk to your boy Dia Davis is what he needs. Like, he needs a few lessons.
Yeah, I just think with Sean, Sean has such a unique style. Now look, yeah, Khamzat may just be a murderer. Like, he may be a guy who's just going to be able to go out there and ragdoll everybody. I think like seeing what he was able to do against Kamaru was like, whoa, I haven't seen anybody feel like they're that dominant. And it's also because of the person who was against, and thinking like it looks inevitable for him to get a takedown. Like, it's the closest to Khabib we've seen since Khabib, as far as that's concerned. But I also think that the striking game, like, it didn't really look close. And you're not talking about necessarily the greatest striker in Kamaru Usman. He's good. He's not a bad striker, but it's not like, I don't think anybody would have gone in and say, oh, where are the big advantages here? You probably would have gone into that fight saying, even on grappling, if I'm going to give somebody a nod, probably Khamzat on power. And it's kind of the opposite. Like, the gulf was bigger in the grappling than it was in the striking.
No doubt. When it comes to Sean Strickland, though, do we think that he just had his best fight that Saturday night against Israel Adesanya? Or do we think that he's maybe taking his game up to another level because he was a striking machine? I mean, everything that he threw, he hit that night.
It's such an interesting question with him because he's such a tough guy to read. He seems to keep things so real. But I mean, when you win the fight everybody counted you out of, what does that do for your confidence? What does that do for anybody else you're in there with? So for me, I'm looking at it from the standpoint of like, does this guy get better now that he knows he can do it? Or is he now going to be in there with all the sharks and eventually somebody's going to get him? I think most people are looking at this and saying Sean Strickland being a one-hit wonder is probably more likely. But I don't know, man. I mean, I think when you make Israel Adesanya look the way that he did, and that guy's reigned over the division as long as he has, even if you think he's a little bit long in the tooth, you have to think like, all right, he's got a shot pretty much against anybody.
That was one of the more surprising results that I can ever remember. Not that Strickland won the fight, even though he's a big underdog, that he dominated the fight, right? That he basically won almost every minute of every round. He was unbelievable that night. So this date a year ago, speaking of guys named Sean O'Malley was not the champion. Aljamain Sterling was, Petr Yan was the number one contender, and since then, O'Malley's beat both those guys. You're going to fight me if I say at this point, the hype is real when it comes to Sean O'Malley. No more questions.
Can't fight you on that one, man, because I'll face the repercussions of the Sugar Show if that happens. But no, man, he's actually he has proven everything. I think he's had his moment. I honestly have more questions about his reign than Strickland's, just because I think that division is so dangerous. It's not really a question of Sean O'Malley's talent. I just think that there's a ton of guys you could slip up against in that division. It just feels like he's about to start a murderer's row of a ton of guys. Whereas middleweight, like, look, Izzy has come out and he's said, I'm going to be out for a while. Robert Whittaker, I can see Sean Strickland taking out an older Robert Whittaker, a guy who's been around for a little bit. Hamzat's obviously the big wild card because maybe it's going to be, him dominating for a little bit. Marvin Vettori. I think that, these are questions. I don't know. I just think that with Sean O'Malley, it feels like, hey, man, that every fight he's going to fight at 135 feels like it could be really, really dangerous and ability for him to lose the belt.
I love that division so much. Speaking of old guys, at UFC 296, El Kukui is back. Tony Ferguson fights Paddy Pimblett. The more I think about it, you're going to fight me if I say, I think El Kukui might get him.
Yeah, I'm going to fight you, dude. Look, I love Tony Ferguson. Like, he's great. Paddy certainly has his questions, but Paddy's young and hungry, and Paddy's dangerous, and has I'm not gonna put this one as the one. Like, look, Tony's had his moments, but I think the thing that's unfortunate, this guy went from one of the most feared guys, unorthodox guys, to a guy that we just go and be like, oh yeah, you remember that moment in that fight, how he kind of looked. So I got to see it. I got to see him get over the finish line before I'm gonna put my money on him.
Before we get out of here and stop fighting and move on to the next segment, the Eagles and the Dolphins win at it on Sunday Night Football, and the Eagles win. You're going to fight me if I say at this point it's pretty clear that Philly's a better team than Miami.
I mean, I have to give them the nod, especially with the trenches, man. They were just so impressive. I thought that they looked really, really fierce up front. Now, the Dolphins did have a lot of injuries on their offensive line. And are getting a lot of reinforcements back. But yeah, man, like, they look like the team that's been there, done that. The Dolphins now in a couple of big-time matchups have shot themselves in the foot. And when you do that against good teams, you got to be able to get things clean, especially on the road. So Dolphins are definitely a team that has some maturity left, but I don't think they're frauds. I think they are legitimately good and have a whole season to kind of round things out.
Quick, are these the three best teams in the NFL? My Chiefs, Jake's Eagles, your Dolphins.
I think that's true.
Good times. Good times. Stay right here. It's Tapped Out on the BetQL Network.
We're back with more Tapped Out with Brendan Tobin and Sean Levine on the BetQL Network.
Tapped Out on the BetQL Network, on YouTube, on the Odyssey app. That's Brendan. I'm Sean. We've got a bunch of fights coming up. UFC 295 has been put in a blender and shaken up all sorts of ways. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about UFC Sao Paulo. But before that, on Saturday night, Francis Ngannou, the Predator, is a plus 750 underdog. What? Who's he fighting? Well, he's boxing against Tyson Fury. To win $100 that night, BT, you have to pay $1,400. Right now, minus $1,400 are the odds for Tyson Fury to win that fight. Before we start to break it down a little bit, be real with me. What's your level of excitement for this one?
Somewhere between Goosey's galore to Goosey's on top of Goosey's. I can't wait for this fight. I'm so excited.
Really?
I cannot wait. I'm super excited for it. I don't know if it's because it's on my birthday. I don't know why, but like, dude, it's such a spectacle. And I'm so off the YouTube athletes boxing. This is cool. It's a cool spectacle. You're talking about the UFC champion. Right now, he's the only one walking the earth who's actively fighting. And the baddest boxing heavyweight champion in the world gonna step into a boxing ring together. I love it. It's gonna be a cool spectacle. I'm very excited. I know it's not gonna be very competitive. Tyson Fury is gonna be amazing, but I can't wait to see Francis Ngannou try and drop a bomb on him, fail, probably get knocked down. And there's a part of me that's just happy for Francis because the promotion talks so much bleep about him. And it's kind of a karmatic thing that like he's getting this monster payday this week, the same week that the UFC heavyweight championship gets blown up. So it's kind of like good for Francis. I'm just happy for him. And I can't wait to see the walkouts and all that stuff. I'm excited about it.
Yeah, Francis probably won't say it, but this really is kind of screwing Dana. Like, he goes out there and he gets his big stage against Tyson Fury the same week that Jon Jones and Stipe Miocic gets pulled off the UFC 295 card. You said you think you know how it goes down, that Francis is going to come out there and swing wild and then eventually go down. Do you think he gets knocked out in this fight?
Probably.
Really?
I just imagine.
So on Saturday night, if I tune in, I'm going to see Francis Ngannou get knocked out, you think? You got my money.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I'm going to see him get like slept, but I think that he'll probably get to a point where like similar to Floyd versus Conor, like I think he'll probably get busted up against the ropes and a ref will step in and stop it. I think that's probably the most likely direction it goes.
Floyd versus Conor, though, we all know what was going on, right? Floyd could have won that fight at any point. Conor was probably a little bit more impressive of a boxer, more unique style of a boxer than I think the general public, and including myself, expected. But frankly, we all know that Conor didn't really last that long. Floyd let him. Do we expect the same thing in the Ngannou-Fury fight?
Yeah, I think it probably – I don't know how long it'll be carried, because it's a couple things. Like, one, Francis he's very muscular. How tired is he going to be from trying to throw bombs at Tyson? Tyson's a lot bigger than him too. I mean, the difference between Floyd and Conor is, Conor had the size advantage that, and as crazy as this may be to a lot of our UFC audience, Francis doesn't have the size advantage here. And I know in every other fight you've ever seen him in, he's had the size advantage. The crazy thing about Tyson Fury is he is a giant. He moves better than anybody else. And he's also become, as he's gotten on in his career, better at carrying his weight, using his weight against opponents. So he's just a very, very dangerous guy. The only thing I can say about Tyson is in heavyweight boxing, he has like he has been put on the canvas before. Not knocked out, but even Steve Cunningham back in the day as a cruiserweight put him on the. So, if one hits that sweet spot, I think Francis, maybe there's a crazy world where Francis puts him down for a second, but I just don't think it's going to be enough to knock him out or anything like that.
Of course, Deontay Wilder did too. I'd be shocked if that happened. I would be stunned if at any point we see Tyson Fury on his ass with Francis Ngannou standing above him. I'd be stunned. I also,
it'd be amazing.
To get to my own question, I don't think that it goes nearly as. How long did Floyd and Conor go? 7? Is that right? 6, 7? It went a while.
I want to say 9.
Did it go 9? Wow. I don't think this one goes as long because I think Fury understands the power that Ngannou has. As much fun as it is and spectacle and all that, let's not pretend like Francis Ngannou couldn't knock him out. And Tyson Fury knows that. So I don't think he messes around. If you made me pick a round, give me Tyson in 3.
Yeah, I think it'll be something like I would say like 4-5. I'm not far off from you. I just think that it's going to be. I'm just curious to see what Francis is going to be like with having to, the cardio of it, how he's been training for it. I know a lot of people made fun of his pad session, and yeah, he shouldn't go into this trying to outbox one of the best boxers on the planet. That's a terrible idea. Go in there, throw some bombs, see if you could do something maybe. And the one thing I'll say with Tyson Fury is he'll play around in fights every now and then. So could we have like an Anderson Silva moment where like he just played a little too much? Maybe. I don't know. It's not likely. It's very unlikely. It's probably impossible, but I am very excited for it. Probably irrationally excited for it, and I can't wait.
Honestly, the more you talk, the more you're getting me excited for it. Like, do we really think there could be a Weidman Silva moment? Do we really think that Ngannou could get knocked out? All right, fine. I'll be in front of my TV watching it. Speaking of big boys going at it, or in this case, not going at it anymore, the big news, Jon Jones' fight is off at UFC 295 against Stipe Miocic. The new fight for the interim heavyweight title is my guy Tom Aspinall versus Sergey Pavlovich. Before we talk about that fight, first, when it comes to Jon Jones and Stipe Miocic, I know you and I have been on record a few times saying we thought both guys, in all likelihood, would retire after this fight. Now that they're not fighting, what happens? Like, is there a chance we don't see Stipe or Jon ever fight in the UFC again?
I mean, you have to put it out there, man. I mean, like, first of all, that's a pretty brutal injury that Jon suffered, like a torn pec tendon off of the bone. Like, that's not great. Jon's 36. Yeah, Jon's 36. He'll turn 37 next year.
And Stipe's 40. So if he has to wait for that fight, it'd make him 41.
Right. So I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility. I don't also really know what Jon is going to hold on for other than that fight. Unless he's just thinking, man, this is the last massive payday I'm going to get. But UFC 300, that would be what, like April? So he's not going to make that. International Fight Week, I suppose, is in the 8-month vicinity for him. So that's always that's always a cool one. But yeah, man, I definitely think it's on the table for sure that this could be the end for Jon Jones. We can't rule it out for his age, for what it's like. I mean, think about this. When Jon doesn't have fighting, it's always a risk that guy is going to go off the rails. And you don't wish that on anybody, but like he needs it. With Stipe, it's just age, but it's like, I almost worry if you had to ask me, hey, who do you think is more likely to fight ever again in their career? I'd actually go Stipe, even the age, just because, yeah, if you ever called Stipe up and he was in the mood to fight, he'd fight. But it's just with Jon, there's so many other variables, and now also add injury on top of it.
I'll have to disagree with that last point that you made, though, because why isn't Stipe fighting right now? I mean, Jon Jones pulled out this card, not Stipe. Why is Stipe not fighting Tom Aspinall or Sergey Pavlovich? It doesn't make sense.
I think it's because Stipe's legacy does mean a lot to him. And I think that, why do I have to fight some young killer? I just watched 2 iconic fighters go down last weekend. What am I going to get out of this? Am I going to get any extra business out of this? And possibly lose a potential Jon Jones fight? I don't blame Stipe for not stepping up and staying on the card. I actually think that if you told me, what am I more excited? I kind of like the young guns going at it more so than would I like to see them against Stipe. I've seen that. I've seen Stipe against Francis Ngannou and, multiple times. Like I'm into the, you know what? Let's just scrap this historic fight for now, put it on the shelf, have the young guys go at it. Cause we don't get a lot of these shots where it's like, this fight has historical meaning. The GOAT against possibly the heavyweight GOAT going at it. Let's shelve it. Let's just keep it in a time capsule, and hopefully in maybe a year's time we'll get it again.
And we went from the guys on their way out in the case of Jon Jones and Stipe Miocic to kind of some new blood with Tom Aspinall and Sergey Pavlovich. Now that we've got that fight, Looking forward to it. Who do you think wins? You know I'm on Team Aspinall.
Yeah, I know. It's such a tough pick because Aspinall is great. He's great. He's a buzzsaw. Probably would already be champion if he didn't get his knee injured, or at least very, very close to it. But he dices everybody up. He doesn't really seem to have a weakness. And then Pavlovich is maybe one of the scariest fighters I've ever seen live. It's such a tough call. I might just go with the dog on that night. Right now, it's Pavlovich. Maybe that swings. It's a pretty close line right now. I think it's like plus 135 or something like that. So I could be swayed. If you told me on fight night, hey, Al Aspinall's the dog. All right, I might put my money on him because these guys seem evenly matched. It's a tough call, man. If you had to have me pick, I'm betting Pavlovich right now, but I don't feel great about it.
Of course, it's a 5-round fight for the interim title. I'll tell you this much right now. That thing ain't going 5. Whoever wins, that thing is not going the distance. All right, we got a couple of minutes left. Let's talk about UFC Sao Paulo, main event a couple of weeks away. Jailton Almeida, that guy is a killer. But is he a minus 500 good against Derek Lewis plus 380? You know that I had sold the Black Beast right down the river, but now I think I'm back on him. You're going to give me 4-1 on Derek Lewis, dude? I'll take it.
Look, there's nobody who's ever been more the epitome of he always has a puncher's chance, because it's literally what he has no matter the time in a fight, no matter if he's getting beat on, he always has a puncher's chance. Little bit of a last minute fight, but not too short notice. You think Derek Lewis, especially Derek Lewis, has been in much better shape. He's been keeping himself in good shape. So yeah, he's looked really, really good. But man, Almeida's just looked like a buzzsaw, man. And I just think with the interesting thing with Derek is he's been somewhere between a gatekeeper and a contender. Like he's every time you want to just throw him as gatekeeper, he's just here to hype up guys. Then he does something that makes you think like, maybe he can go on another run. But I don't know. I think I'm sticking with Almeida. Almeida's a beast, and I feel like he can give Derek a lot of fits all over the place.
Yeah, very tied to Ivasa-ish with his career. Derek Lewis has been recently. Like, when he's good, he's great, but also he loses, and he loses 2 or 3 in a row, and then you have to ask questions. All right, before we wrap up the show, the main event for 295, now that it's not going to be Jon Jones versus Stipe Miocic, is Alex Pereira versus Yuri Prochazka. Right now, Pereira is a slight favorite. I think I like Yuri in that fight. What say you?
Yeah, this is another one that's tough because the thing I have to worry about with Yuri is the health. Like having a devastating shoulder injury that he's coming back from, how confident is he? Because he's such a free and loose fighter. Like he uses his movement. He's very unorthodox. And then you have this hammer that's coming back at him the other way, who's just such a devastating knockout artist in Alex Pereira. I think I'm leaning Pereira in that one just because I have so many questions about what Yuri is going to look like coming back from the shoulder injury. And so I think I just like the security of knowing you have an Alex Pereira who's coming in with not having to rehab stuff and has the full confidence of his skill set. I think he's been pretty confident in how he's looked at this weight class. So I like Pereira.
We'll break this whole card down more on the next show next week. We'll also, of course, talk about UFC Sao Paulo's main event, Jailton Almeida versus Derek Lewis. Thanks to Maddie Betts. Thank you to my producer, Jake Noaker, and for my co-host, Brendan Tobin. I'm the sports machine, Sean Levine, and we'll catch you right here next week on Tapped Out.